My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 32 years old. Last Monday at 7:15 a.m., two police officers stood in my living room with a warrant for my arrest for stealing my own sister's identity. She's the unstable one in this family. Sienna screamed at them, tears streaming down her face, while wearing her perfect cream cardigan. She's dangerous, she's spiraling, and she's been forging my documents for years to ruin me. My parents joined on speakerphone from Tampa, their voices cold and certain. "Officer, Clara has been mentally unstable since she was 12, my mother said firmly. We have all the proof. The same sister who makes a fortune selling Pure Boundaries courses and telling strangers how to escape toxic families was now destroying mine with a smile behind her tears. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just looked at the lead detective and said calmly, "Please let me bring one folder from the closet." They had no idea what was inside. They had no idea that folder was about to destroy everything they believed. Before I tell you what happened when they finally opened that folder, please take a moment to like and subscribe. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The first thing you need to understand about my family is that I was never the daughter in the photographs. If you walked through our front door in Lafayette, you'd see a long portrait of my sister from First Communion to graduation, and one photo of me at 6 years old in a yellow sweater, leaning against a wooden fence. That fence still stands, but the photo was never updated. Every holiday, I'd straighten that frame. It always tilted left, as if even the wall couldn't commit to me. My mother, Margaret Hayes, was an elementary school nurse for 23 years. She had a voice that sounded patient, even when it wasn't, and a vocabulary she used like a sorting hat. Sienna was creative, magnetic, sweet. I was dramatic, sensitive, intense, and eventually difficult. My father, Thomas Hayes, everyone calls him Tom, worked as a structural engineer. He rarely spoke, but his silence was never neutral. It was a vote. My sister, Sienna, 2 years younger, has been called C since she was 4 because she thought her full name sounded like a grandmother. My mother thought everything about her was charming. By the time I was 9, I'd figured out the system. The same behavior had 2 different names depending on which daughter performed it. If C cried, she was sensitively beautiful. If I cried, I was making a scene. If C wanted attention, she was creative. If I did, I was needy. If C told a lie, it was a misunderstanding. If I told the truth, it was causing problems. I remember one summer afternoon in 2003, I was 9, crouched behind the hydrangeas, and I heard my mother tell our neighbor, "Clara gets so worked up over the smallest things. Sienna just lets it roll off her." I sat very still in the dirt. I hadn't been worked up in days, but my mother had described me with such certainty that I understood for the first time. The version of me other people knew was a version my mother was writing. I could not edit it. When I was 11, I started writing things down, not a diary, because feelings were inadmissible in our house. What I needed were facts. The first entry was a piece of paper folded in quarters with one sentence. C took my homework on Tuesday. She gave it back without page 3. I dated it, October 17th, 2005, and put it inside an empty shoebox under my bed. I didn't know yet what evidence was. I just knew memory wasn't enough. The real folder began on October 14th, 2006, my grandmother's 75th birthday party in Boulder. My grandmother, Catherine Hayes, lived in a tall wooden house that smelled like cedar and rose hand cream. We drove up that morning in my father's Subaru. I was 12, C was 10. My mother handed C the wrapped present. I was given the thin, forgettable card, my role. The party had about 20 people. After cake, my grandmother went upstairs. When she came down, she was holding her cedar jewelry drawer, and it was empty in the wrong place. Her emerald ring, the one she'd promised me when I was 7, was gone. The room went quiet. "See, perfect pink-cheeked C," said in a small voice. I think Clara asked to try it on earlier. She said she just wanted to see how it looked. I told her not to. My grandmother looked at me. I hadn't touched that ring. My mother walked to the guest room, opened my jewelry box, and the ring was inside. Of course it was inside. I hadn't opened that box in weeks. My grandmother looked at me like she didn't know who I was. My sister looked at me like she finally did. On the drive home, I sat in the back seat and counted the streetlights between Boulder and Lafayette, 38 of them, because I could not cry. My parents thought I was asleep. My mother said, "She needs help, Tom. She's the unstable one in this family. We have to do something before she ruins another holiday." My father said, "Make the appointment." That was the first time I heard the sentence, "the unstable one in this family." It would be repeated every year until I was 32. 2 weeks later, my mother drove me to a child psychologist's office on Pearl Street. The psychologist, Dr. Eleanor Pritchard, saw me twice. She asked about school and what I liked to read, but never about the ring. I think she didn't ask because she already knew. After the second session, she asked my parents to step into her office without me. I sat in the waiting room, watching the clownfish swim in circles. I heard one sentence clearly through the door. "You should be watching the other daughter very carefully. This girl is not the one I'm worried about." When my parents came out, my mother's face was a careful blank. She paid and we left. We never went back for a third session. That night, my mother told me Dr. Pritchard said I was going through a phase. I knew that wasn't true. I took my shoebox, added the visitor sticker from that office, number 0419, and wrote the date. I called it the keeping box. A year later, I moved everything into a manila folder. The folder grew slowly, the way scar tissue does. I won't walk you through every entry, because the point of a pattern is not the individual events, it's that the events are interchangeable. But there are 4 I have to tell you about. When I was 15, C forged my signature on a hallway pass to skip class. I didn't know until my mother sat me down with a faxed photocopy and said, "Why would you do this to your sister?" I looked at the signature. The slant was wrong, the crossbar too short. I told my mother. She said I was making excuses. I was banned from prom. Sai cried about how guilty she felt. My mother told her she was brave. That night, I got a copy of that forgery and put it in the folder. When I was 20, I was a sophomore at the University of Denver. My mother had given C a supplemental card on a Chase account in my name for emergency tuition. In 3 months, C spent $4,800, then cried that I had taken the card and used it on a boyfriend. There was no boyfriend. The transactions were in Boulder, time-stamped during my midterm exams 2 hours away. I had the proctor logs. My father said, "We'll handle it as a family." They took the money from my next semester's tuition. I worked 2 jobs to make it up. The proctor logs and statements went into the folder. When I was 25, at Thanksgiving at my aunt's house, C leaned forward and said, "I'm only telling you all because I'm worried. Clara has been seeing a therapist for stalking a coworker. She needs help." There was no coworker, no stalking, no therapist. Just 14 relatives looking at me like I was a stranger. I didn't defend myself. I'd learned that was a waste of breath. That night, my cousin Victoria sent me a message. That didn't sit right with me. I'm sorry I didn't say anything. It was the first time anyone outside my immediate family admitted they saw it. I saved the screenshot. When I was 28, my best friend from college, Piper, was planning her wedding. C called Piper and said she was secretly organizing a surprise for me. Could Piper lend her $3,200 for a vendor? There was no surprise, no vendor. Just a Venmo trail that ended at a hair studio. Piper called me in tears 4 months later, asking if I'd taken the money. I paid Piper back from my savings. I didn't tell her I hadn't taken it. Some friendships survive only if you let them keep the easier version. I put the screenshots in the folder. By 28, I had stopped showing up only in my sister's stories. I had started showing up in her receipts. There was one more entry from 2020. Steed texted asking for our mother's maiden name, claiming a family tree project. She was 24 and not in any class. I sent it anyway. It seemed so small. I saved the message. It's on page 19. In 2006, it would have looked like nothing. By 2026, it was the beginning of the timeline that broke the room. By the time I was 32, I had built a life that didn't look anything like that house in Lafayette. I moved to Denver, bought a small condo in Lower Highlands, 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, a hallway closet that I used as a filing room. I work as a senior forensic auditor at Aspen Ridge Insurance Group, a certified fraud examiner. My job every day is to read documents until I find where someone has lied in writing. I'm very good at it. I run my own credit report once a quarter through the firm's monitoring service. Or, I thought I did. My friends are few and durable. Piper, now married, Bram Ellsworth, an attorney and former forensic accountant who consults for our firm, and my cousin Victoria, who I'd texted on and off for years but hadn't seen since 2014. I kept low contact with my parents, 3 visits a year, 2 calls a month. I kept the door cracked, mostly for my grandmother, and partly because hope is the hardest thing to put down. I was about to learn it was the most expensive thing I'd ever kept. My grandmother, Catherine, had moved into a memory care facility in 2019. By 2024, she no longer recognized me. I still drove up twice a month and read to her from her favorite book. I kept the visitor sticker from her facility, a small green oval, number 0816, in the folder, right behind the blue one from 2006. 2 stickers, 18 years apart. My sister, by contrast, had become something I could no longer avoid. In 2021, she launched a TikTok account called Pure Boundaries with Sienna. By 2023, she had over 400,000 followers and sold a paid course, Healing from Toxic Family, for $389. Her signature line, "My truth is sacred." I didn't follow her, but the algorithm found me. One reel from February 2026 had 1.3 million views, she said. Sometimes the most toxic person in your life is the one closest to you. Sometimes she's even your sister. My sister had monetized the exact word our mother had used on me at 12. She charged $389 a head for it. I had built my entire career on catching what other people hide. I didn't know that my sister had been hiding inside my own social security number for 6 years. The call came on a Thursday afternoon in early December 2025. 4:38 p.m., I was at my desk. The number was unfamiliar. I almost let it go to voicemail. A man's voice. "Hi, this is from Tate and Brennan Collections regarding an account ending in 8261. Am I speaking with Clara Hayes?" I said yes. He said the account had been delinquent for 14 months. Balance a little over $11,000. A consumer credit card issued in 2022 from a bank I'd never used. He sent me the documentation. The cardholder name on the application was Clara M. Hayes. Address a UPS store mailbox in Aurora I'd never been to, a phone number I didn't recognize. I sat at my desk for 22 minutes without moving. Then I did the only thing my training had taught me. I opened a spreadsheet and pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus. They came back 46 pages long. There were 11 accounts I had never opened, with a total outstanding balance of $89,200. The largest was a personal consolidation loan for $63,500 issued in March 2024. Same Aurora mailbox. My credit monitoring had never flagged a single account because 9 of the 11 applications were filed under slight name variations: Clara M. Hayes, C. Hayes, Clara Vance, with addresses and phone numbers that didn't match my profile. It was the same trick we caught sophisticated fraudsters using in our audits twice a month. I had simply never thought to run it on myself. Over the next 3 weeks, I built a forensic timeline. I pulled signature exemplars from every credit application. The signatures on all 11 were the same hand, and it wasn't mine. I cross-referenced the originating IP addresses on the 7 accounts opened online. 6 of them resolved to a residential Wi-Fi router whose Spectrum bill had been screenshotted to me by my sister 3 years earlier when she'd asked to borrow $800. I matched a burner phone number from 3 accounts to a number SI had texted me from in 2021 during a family emergency that turned out not to be one. I drove past that UPS store in East Aurora and found on Instagram a photo of C standing outside that exact storefront, captioned, "Blessings Gratitude," dated June 2023. I worked on the file most nights from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m., the way I built every case at Aspen Ridge, with Bates numbers in the lower right corner of every exhibit. I kept the working files on an external drive, stored in a small safe behind a bookshelf. I made sure the chain of custody was clean. The strangest part was the calm. I had expected rage. Instead, I felt relief. 20 years of small things had finally arrived at a destination I could name out loud. I was no longer the older daughter who couldn't let things go. I was a forensic auditor with a documented case. On January 29, 2026, I filed an FTC identity theft report, report number 25, T8229. I saved the confirmation PDF. I did not file a police report yet. I wanted the full forensic timeline first. That decision saved me in March. In the first week of February, I flew to Tampa for a weekend at my parents' new place. I said nothing about my investigation. I made small talk, ate my mother's pasta, helped my father move a bookshelf. On the drive to the airport, my mother said, "Clara, have you been pulling your credit lately?" I told her no. She nodded, smiling in a small way that didn't reach her eyes. "You know how Sienna worries about you. She just wants you to be okay." On the plane back to Denver, I realized something I should have realized at 12. The folder wasn't ready yet, but the people I was filing against were already moving. The first sign came from Victoria. On Monday, March 2nd, 2026, at 6:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Victoria, Clara, I just heard something at brunch. I screenshotted a message Sienna sent your mum 3 weeks ago. I think you need to see it." The screenshot was an iMessage thread between C and my mother, dated February 8th. SE had written, "Mum, listen, if she keeps digging, we need to file first. We need her to look unwell before she has time to talk." I read it 3 times. I sat up in bed. I made coffee. I didn't call my lawyer yet. 8 minutes later, my doorbell rang. 2 officers were in the hallway. Lead officer was a man in his 40s with a thick mustache. Badge read, Officer Klein. Behind them stood my sister Sienna in a perfect cream cardigan, dabbing her eyes with one hand. Officer Klein held up a warrant. "Ms. Hayes, we have a warrant for your arrest. The charge is identity theft." I looked at the warrant, at my sister, back at him. "Officer," I said, "may I bring one folder from the hallway closet?" He looked at the closet, then at me. "As long as it's not a weapon, yes." I asked if I could call my attorney. He said yes. I called Bram Ellsworth. He answered on the second ring. I told him in 11 seconds what was happening. He said, "Clara, listen carefully. Do not answer any question without me. The folder stays closed until I say so. I'm 12 minutes from the station." While I was on the phone, my parents joined on speakerphone. My mother said firmly, "Officer Clara has been mentally unstable since she was 12. We have all the proof. She's been forging documents, threatening Sienna. We have signed sworn statements." My father said nothing. I heard him breathing. Officer Klein cuffed me gently, the kind they use for cooperative arrests, and I walked to the hallway closet. On the top shelf, behind a box of replacement light bulbs, was a grey box labelled Personal Long Term. I lifted the lid and removed a single manila folder, half an inch thick, sealed with 2 rubber bands, 6 coloured tabs sticking out. I tucked it under my arm. The drive to the station took 22 minutes. I sat in the back of the Ford Explorer, the morning sun low across 15th Street. Bram met me in the interview room, room 4B, fluorescent lighting, brushed metal table bolted to the floor. He sat next to me, opened his notepad. Calm, slow, let her open. The investigator came in, Detective Morgan Walsh, 51, dark grey blazer, silver hoop earrings. She carried a thick, red case file. She read me my rights and said, "Miss Hayes, I'd like to talk to you about a complaint filed against you on Sunday night by your sister, Sienna Hayes." Bram nodded once. I said nothing. She opened the file and read the summary. 11 fraudulent credit accounts in Sienna's name, outstanding balance, approximately $89,000, pattern of escalating impersonation, signature forgery, and emotional harassment. The complaint included a psychological evaluation from October 2006 documenting the alleged perpetrator's long-standing mental instability, plus notarized sworn statements from both parents. "Do you understand the federal charges you are facing?" I said I did. She slid a laptop across the table and played a witness statement C had recorded the night before. Warm lighting, a book called Boundaries on the coffee table behind her. She was crying. "She's the unstable one in this family. She always has been. We have a psychological evaluation from when she was 12. My parents and I are heartbroken, but we can't protect her anymore. My truth is sacred." The video ended. Detective Walsh looked at me. I knew what a half-decided face looked like. Hers was exactly that. She had read the paperwork, and the paperwork pointed at me. But she'd also been a detective long enough to know a calm defendant when she saw one. "Miss Hayes, do you have anything to say in your defense?" I looked at Bram. He nodded. I placed the folder on the table and slid it gently across the metal. "Detective Walsh, before you charge me, I'd like you to open this. Start with tab 3. It's chronological." She opened tab 3. The first page was a single laminated sheet with a small blue visitor sticker in the center, number 0419. Below it, in my 12-year-old handwriting, Dr. Eleanor Pritchard, Pearl Street, Boulder, October 14, 2006. Note to parents withheld. The second page was the full psychological evaluation, not the cropped version C had submitted, all 6 pages. At the bottom of page 4, Dr. Pritchard's typed clinical notes. Note to parents, I recommend evaluating the younger sibling. The dynamic in this family is concerning, and the wrong child is presenting. I will not be able to continue treatment of the older child unless the parents engage in family therapy and consider evaluation of the younger sibling. Detective Walsh read it twice. She looked at the stamp in the corner. Authentic copy, released to subject Clara Hayes, November 18, 2025. She looked up. "You contacted Dr. Pritchard last November." I said. She remembered me. She had been waiting 20 years for someone to ask the right question too. She turned to tab 1, the current evidence. 11 fraudulent accounts, account origination, IPs matching C's residential Wi-Fi router, a Spectrum bill screenshotted to me in 2022, side by side with application metadata, identical down to the modem serial number. 3 accounts opened from a burner phone number matching a number SI had used to text me in 2021. The UPS store mailbox flagged on the credit applications, paired with C's own Instagram photo standing in front of that storefront. Signature exemplars, the forged signatures on all 11 applications, side by side with my actual signature card from Bellwether Credit Union. The forensic comparison was visible to the naked eye. The capital C leaned too far right, the Y had a hook in the wrong direction. And then page 7, the document C had submitted with her March 1st complaint, the loan application she claimed I had forged in her name. The signatures on those read Sienna Hayes, but the handwriting matched in slant, pressure, and formation of the S and the N, the same hand that had forged my signatures. The same person had forged both sides. Detective Walsh put the page down and rubbed the bridge of her nose. The gesture of someone realizing the file they were reading was upside down. She turned to tab 2, the 20-year pattern, 14 entries chronologically, from the Hall Pass forgery in 2009 to the wedding loan in 2022, to 8 more I haven't described, because the point is, the pattern. She read 3, then closed the tab. "You kept a log," she said. "I kept a record," I replied. She tapped the folder twice with her index finger, an auditor's gesture when she knows the deeper she goes, the more she'll find. She turned back to tab 1 and looked at the FTC identity theft report I had filed on January 29th, 6 weeks before C filed her own complaint. She held the FTC printout in her right hand and C's March 1st filing in her left. 31 days, she said almost to herself. The wrong way around. She picked up the desk phone and asked a colleague to bring Sienna in for follow-up questions in room 4A and to put a hold on processing my charges. She asked Bram if he wanted to be present. He said yes. While they waited, the phone rang. Detective Walsh picked up, listened, then covered the receiver. "There's a Victoria Cole on the line. She says she has corroborating documentation, been keeping it since 2019. I nodded. She put it on speaker. Victoria's voice came through, level and clear. "Detective, I have additional documentation, screenshots, group chat exports, dates. I've been keeping them since November 2019. I didn't know my cousin had her own folder. For 20 years, I thought I was alone in noticing. I wasn't. I had just been alone in keeping the receipts." Detective Walsh thanked her, ended the call, and walked into room 4A. I sat alone with Bram for 2 minutes. He didn't look at me, just wrote something on his notepad. Through the wall, I heard her voice. "Ms. Hayes, can you explain why your phone IP matches the account origination IP for 9 of 11 fraudulent accounts opened in your sister's name?" A pause, then C's voice, smaller now. "I never used that mailbox." Then Detective Walsh. "This is your Instagram post from June 2023. You're standing in front of that mailbox. Would you like to revise your statement?" 11 seconds of silence. Then Sienna said, "I want a lawyer." That was the end of her statement. Through the speakerphone on Detective Walsh's desk, still connected to my parents in Tampa, I heard my mother stop breathing. I hadn't realized she was still on the line. "Mum," I said calmly, "you can hang up now." She didn't hang up, but she didn't say anything else either. That was the loudest she had ever been. Detective Walsh came back at 10:34 a.m. She closed the door, sat down, and looked at me with the kind of look I had spent 20 years trying to earn from anyone in my family, finally offered by a stranger in a grey blazer. Ms. Hayes, I'm releasing you. Charges against you are being dropped pending paperwork. We will be opening a state investigation into your sister for forgery, identity theft, and filing a false police report. I'll refer this to the Secret Service for federal review. You should expect a follow-up statement. She paused, then more quietly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it took 20 years. It was the first apology I had ever heard from someone in uniform. It was not the apology I had wanted my whole life, but it was the first one I had ever earned in front of my mother. Bram and I walked out. He carried the folder, now evidence in an active investigation, to be logged into chain of custody. The duty clerk copied every page, returned the originals to Bram in a sealed envelope, and gave me a receipt with a case number. In the hallway, my parents were waiting on a bench. My mother stood up, her face wet, hands shaking, reaching toward me. Clara, please. We didn't know. We didn't know. I stopped about 4 feet away. Mom, you had Dr. Pritchard's letter for 20 years. You knew. She opened her mouth, closed it, and sat back down. She didn't look at me again. I think she was doing the math she'd spent 20 years refusing to do, counting back year by year, holiday by holiday, and seeing for the first time the shape of the wall she had built with my name on the bricks. My father walked past me 3 times in that hallway. Not a word, not a glance. That was the loudest he had ever been. Sienna sat alone on a metal bench by booking, cardigan rumpled, mascara streaked. She looked up as I walked past. Neither of us said a word. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been said in tab 3. By Friday of that week, the brand began to come apart. Someone, I never confirmed who, had posted screenshots of C's "We need to file first" message to a wellness industry watchdog. Within 24 hours, it was shared 4,000 times. By Saturday, Instagram restricted pure boundaries with Sienna. By the end of the month, the page was gone, the $389 course no longer available, the signature line, "My truth is sacred," replaced by a frozen page reading, "This account is no longer available." I received 4 messages from former customers asking if they'd made the wrong call, cutting off family members. I read each twice, and I didn't reply. I sat with the question for a long time. Some of them might have cut off people worth keeping. That's the part that doesn't get a happy ending. By the second week of April, a federal grand jury indicted Sienna Hayes on aggravated identity theft and state forgery charges. She was released on a $20,000 cash bond my parents signed. The federal charge carries a mandatory minimum of 24 months. There will be a plea deal. There won't be a way out of all of it. I lost 2 weeks of work to administrative leave at Aspen Ridge, but once the charges were dropped, my supervisor reinstated me with a written apology I didn't need but appreciated. The credit bureau dispute took about 4 months, the most straightforward part of any of it. I received my first uniformed apology. I have not received one from my father. I don't think I ever will. In early May, my mother sent me a text, 4 words. I think I knew. She added, a minute later, "I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to hear it from me." I read it twice. I did not reply. I made peppermint tea with lemon, the kind my grandmother liked, and sat at my kitchen counter, watching the late afternoon sun move across the floorboards. I thought about Dr. Pritchard, the small blue sticker, my grandmother who couldn't remember my name and would never know any of this happened. The following Saturday, Victoria drove down from Fort Collins. We met at a small bistro in Capitol Hill, mismatched chairs, a chalkboard menu nobody updates. I hadn't seen her in person since 2014. We ordered lasagna and a small glass of Cabernet each. We didn't talk about Sienna for the first 30 minutes. We talked about her dog, her brother, the smell of Boulder in October. Eventually, she said, "You know what I kept thinking that whole time? I kept thinking, what if she's keeping a folder too? And there you were. I laughed for the first time in 3 months. A small laugh, almost a breath, but real. For the first time, the folder wasn't the most important thing in the room. The person across from me was. That night, I drove home with the heater low and the radio off. I parked, rode the elevator up, unlocked my door, turned on one lamp. The banker's box was still on the top shelf of the hallway closet. I hadn't opened it since the arrest. The folder itself was still in Bram's sealed envelope, lodged with the courts. I took the empty box down anyway. I set it on the kitchen counter. I looked at it for a long time. I thought about throwing it away. I thought about burning it. I did neither. I carried it back to the closet and placed it on the top shelf, exactly where it had been for 13 years. I didn't lock it. I didn't seal it. I didn't need to. I left it there, not because I needed it, but because I had finally earned the right to put it down. 20 years, 36 pages, one sister, one folder, one shelf. That was enough. If you have ever been called the unstable one for noticing the pattern, or kept receipts in silence because you knew one day you would need them, or stayed in a family that asked you to apologize for the shape of your own handwriting, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Comment one word. Just one. I'll be reading them. My name is Clara Hayes. This time, I am the one who told the story.